everyone, and welcome to another episode of If I Knew Then, Mom Edition. I'm your host, Maria, and I'm so excited you're here. This podcast is all about real motherhood stories, those unfiltered, powerful stories we wish we would have known before we became moms. Whether it's about healing, identity, or those tiny humans that somehow manage to teach us more about ourselves than we have ever imagined. This space is for it all. Today, I am honored to have an incredible guest, Monica. Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. I am very excited to be here.
So tell us, I would love to, start from the beginning, about your motherhood journey.
Yes, when I was married, I actually lived on the West Coast, and we had two kids, and we found that it was very expensive to live in California. And so we ended up moving all the way to North Carolina. No jobs, we didn't know anybody, but we ended up moving here. And the kids were really young. I mean, both preschool, so about 18 months and 3 years old. And we went through a divorce shortly after we moved here. And so I suddenly became a single parent, no family here. I did find a temp job when I was married, but then when we filed the divorce here in North Carolina, you actually have to wait 12 months of separation before you can go and actually file the paperwork with the court to get it approved. There was some time there, but then once we were finally allowed to file, we filed for the divorce, and then I lost my job. So now I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. I'm unemployed. I got the house, but I also got the marital debt of $250,000, and half of that was the mortgage. Yeah, and that first time I was unemployed 9 months. So I was unemployed 3 times for a total of almost 2 years in that first 5 years after the divorce. It was a real rough go of it. So that's
Wow.
my starting point.
Wow. Wow. Like, you're incredible because I have 2 little ones of my own and I have my husband with me. And, when those financial hits it's a very stressful and, it's so scary. And I can only imagine as a single parent.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of thought about moving to South Florida, which is where I'm originally from, and moving in with my mom with the kids. But South Florida had a higher unemployment rate than here in North Carolina. So it didn't seem to make sense for me to go that direction. Plus, my son is on the autism spectrum, and so we have support here with different organizations. And to leave that behind would have been monumental, I think, for us. And so while it was hard to stay here, I think it was better for the kids to do that. Yeah. But I mean, my parents, I'll just say that my parents immigrated here from Italy. So my dad got called for a job. They got married. He came out. And then a year later, my mother came. And my mother had never left the small town that she was from in Italy. Neither one of them spoke English. They didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. The only person they knew was the guy that called my dad for employment. They had no place to stay when they first got here. I mean, it was just kind of crazy. And it's just amazing, I think, when we think about people immigrating and like why, why would you come? But, the truth of the matter is that, and I write this in my book, and we'll get to that, but I talk about, how bad things must have been for them in their small town to leave everything, their family, their friends, their comfort zone, to leave all of that behind and start with literally nothing. And I can't even imagine. As hard as it was for me, at least I had a roof over my head. I speak the language. I'm college educated, but they didn't have any of that. And so it was hard for me, but sometimes I think it was harder for them. But they were very old school with money. They didn't buy things that they didn't have cash for. My mom never used a credit card. She had one. She would use it once a year. She would buy herself brand new underwear every year, and she'd use the credit card so they wouldn't close it. And then she'd pay it right away. And that was it. So that was like her little emergency that she liked to keep. But other than that, everything was cash life as much as possible. So I watched that with them, but I did not learn the lesson. And so when I moved away, when I got married, we were spenders. At least I spent within, like, at the paychecks, I spent everything that came in. My spouse spent all of that and more. There was some financial infidelity where he opened a credit card behind my back and ran that up. And I only found out because the credit card company called the house and said that we're putting a lien on your property until this bill is somewhat paid or paid in full or something. So, I mean, it was a lot of school of hard knocks in the beginning. He'd spend money out of the checking account that was earmarked for utility bills and whatnot, and stuff would bounce. He would lock us out of the checking account. I mean, it was just, he was not a good person financially. That was not his strong suit. And that was a hard lesson to learn. I wasn't much better, but at least I wasn't bouncing anything and locking us out and opening up credit cards and stuff. So, but between the two of us, it was not a pretty picture, which is how we ended up with all that debt. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty admirable, like to see people coming from different countries with absolutely nothing and being able to do what they do and raise a family. And it's just very, because I was born in Colombia and my parents went from Colombia to here. I, we, like, they didn't really teach us much about money except like you should save and make sure that you're careful with how you spend it. But that's as far as we got, right? And seeing my parents like go from being a dentist in Colombia to cleaning houses here and then, going up and scaling is just very inspiring. And I'm pretty sure you got a lot of inspiration from your parents because of that.
My mother, especially, I actually refer to her as a money magician. She could take like $1 and make it look like $5 worth of stuff. And I don't just, it's just amazing to me how she was so good at stretching her money. So, after the divorce, and then when you go through your own financial devastation, I started harnessing those skills and learning, from my mom and trying to figure out how do I do that in my own house when you're unemployed and you still have 2 kids to feed and no job in sight. So how am I going to stretch these dollars? How am I going to make ends meet every month? And necessity is truly the mother of all invention. Yeah, there was a lot of creative stealing from Peter to pay Paul, and different things that I could do to try to make things stretch. Like I'd barter clothes with one of the neighbors who. So I had would give her my son's clothes that he would outgrow, and then she had an older daughter, so she would give me her daughter's clothes for my daughter, and so we would trade clothes, and then I'd only have to buy clothes for one kid, kind of thing. And so just stuff like that I learned to do. Plus, I like to cook, so my mother taught me how to make pasta. So we'd get like a thing of flour and some eggs, and the kids and I would make pasta with different things, and raviolis and spaghetti and stuff like that. Or she'd get, like, my mom would, her claim to fame was she'd get one whole chicken and she would roast that, and then she would make 3 dinners out of it. So she would make one dinner with the legs, the wings, the thighs, and then she'd have a different thing with the breast, and then she would have a third where she'd take all the bones and make chicken soup out of that and make broth. So she goes, 1 chicken, 3 meals.
I think that's brilliant. Like, yeah. There's so many things that we can't do. And so, for example, my husband and I finally, the past 2 years, we've been very more conscious about our financials and, being in our budgets and savings and all of the good stuff. And there's sometimes that, he tells me, because I have ADHD. I got diagnosed at 30. And as an ADHDer, we tend to be overspenders, right? And it's that kind of like the adrenaline rush that is very dangerous, right? Oh, and so thankfully, we've been able to work things out and just like learn how to properly budget. And so I know that, we have like an app and everything that tells me like you're at like whatever, and it tells like it's like it's a good reminder. And so I look and I'm like, okay, there's no more budget for whatever, let's say groceries. Okay, what is it that I have? Because there's a lot of things that, we tend to rebuy and we never use, or things like that. So I was like, oh man. Well, to get creative, I go and ask GPT, like whatever, I have chicken breast, I have this and this and this and this, what can I make? And then it gives me a whole recipe, and sometimes there's leftovers, and there's like, perfect, done. Didn't have to spend.
We play a game in the house where it's like one of those things where you're like, I should go to the grocery store. And then I'm like, you know what? And so I call it one more day. So I want to see how many days can I go before I really cannot make a meal in this house. And really, it's amazing. I think the longest I've gone is 6 days where I did not go. So it's almost a full week. And I mean, granted, the meals were a little kind of lopsided, but they were still like actual, hot food meals of, like, maybe I made a, roasted cauliflower, and then maybe there was a jar of pickled artichokes and, maybe some, hamburger meat that I made into little meatballs or something. So, I mean, it's a little lopsided, but it's still a meal, and we can still stretch it out to see how many. But yeah, it is kind of fun to do that. And the other thing I used to do when the kids were little was we used to do the taste test game where, so this way they felt like they were participating in the food for the week. And so, like, here's an example. I would buy, like pears, they come in different varieties. So I'd buy one of each pear, and then I'd bring it home. We'd wash them, we'd slice them up, and I'd put them on different plates. And then we'd sit around this, because this is our snack time too. And we'd sit around and we'd try each pear, and I'd tell them, this is, this is this kind of pear. And, I can't think of the names of them all now, but I would say, this is the name of this pear. And we'd taste it. And then we'd go through all of them and we'd say, like, what do you like about it, not like about it? And then we would vote which pear was the one that was the best. And then I'd go back to the store and I'd get more of that one. This way, they feel like like they got a chance to say what we're going to be eating. And I would do it all. You could do that with all kinds of stuff. Like using pears as an example, but I mean, like eggplant, and, it's amazing. I mean, mushrooms, things that, you think my kid will never eat that. Well, you would be surprised. I mean, my son would always, he's never a mushroom person. And I just would make them, and then I would wait a couple of weeks and I'd make them in different ways. So one time I stuff it, one time I saute it, one time I, ground it and then use it as a meat substitute in a sauce. It was a vegetarian stuffed mushroom that I made, that he was like, this is the best thing ever. And ever since that, he tries every single mushroom I bring to the house. I go to the farmer's market and I'll get different kinds, and we'll mix it with some ground meat, and I'll make raviolis with it. And he is just like, this is the best thing ever. So, it's like I tell them, you may not like it now, but don't write it off, because your taste buds change, and you grow, you learn, you try different things, and it's amazing the stuff that you like. So I mean, food, especially now, is so expensive, but to be creative like that and find ways that, you're stretching your dollars is really important.
Yeah, especially with everything that's been going on, it's just making things harder. There's sometimes that I'm like, should I even buy raspberries? Because there's weeks that they love raspberries, and then the other weeks that they don't. And then like we have to throw them away because nobody else eats them. Like I can only eat so much like raspberries
Right.
for a person, And I
Oh
know,
yeah.
but you bring a very valid point. Like I can do different recipes and different activities with them that I like that. Thank you. I appreciate that, because I'm here like
Absolutely.
half the time I'm like, what do I do with this food? Like it comes to a certain point that you're just like, so expensive. Should I even buy it anymore? Should I try something new? And yeah, I really like that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because food is just one of those things that brings people together. It builds community, and it's opportunity for conversation at the table of what you like, what you don't like. And, and my kids, I'd swap them out, take turns, one-on-one, where they would help me in the kitchen. And so one would prep, one would saute, and so that they get that exposure to see, like I have them try it, before I put the meal together. We would, taste some of the things before you put the meal together, like what does parsley taste like before you put it in, or, like my son loves onion and garlic, but what does this cheese taste like? And so they would try it with as an individual, and then they could see how it all comes together in the kitchen, and as a meal. It's like there's a lot of pride for them. They participated in that. They know what goes in it, and then they can tell, like if you're in the kitchen with them, they could tell dad, this is what goes in it, and this is how we made it. Like it's a lot of fun for them too, and they get excited about it. So then they're more likely to eat it.
That is 100% true. Yeah. I have my little one. Well, one of them is 2 and the other one is 4, and that 4-year-old sometimes likes to help me. She's kind of like best way. It's kind of like a cat, kind of like when she wants to, where she wants to, and how she wants to, and so I find it like very cute, because there's sometimes that I'm about to finish cooking, and that's when she's like, Mom, can I help you? And I'm like, so now I'm like, okay, now I have to be creative. How is it that she can help me and be prideful of the fact that she's helping me? Because at
Yeah.
that point, it's kind of like, why didn't you, like, I asked you and you said no, and now you want to, and now what do we do? So it's kind of like, but I love this. Like, I love those like this because I try to include them in. The 2-year old still too little, so when I see her, she's eating things already. The other day we decided to do grilled cheese, and they wanted to do stars, little stars and big stars. And so grilled cheese. So I did like mini little stars and then the bigger stars. But when I'm seeing the little one is eating the bread and then eating the cheese. And then by the time that was dinner time, she was not hungry. Could
Right.
already eat everything. But it was like serious. And the big one was like, no, you shouldn't be eating that. Not yet. You need to hold on. So it was like really cute. And it's just like, for any mom that's listening, I know that it can be messy and
Yeah.
there's sometimes like just go, just do it, but
My daughter, very adventurous. And now as an adult child, she's a bit of a foodie. Like she really appreciates. But I remember in kindergarten, they would pack little snacks. And so they could all eat in the classroom. And her favorite thing to take was prosciutto and some sharp cheese and some bread. That was her favorite thing. And so she was telling me, I was asking her how school went, and she had the prosciutto. And she goes, oh, Mom, she goes, the other kids, they've never seen it before. And so they were asking me, like, what are you eating? And she goes, oh, prosciutto. And they were like, what's that? And she goes, it's pig's butt. And then they were all, ew. And then she would take the strip and she would basically hang it over her head and just kind of lower it in her mouth just to freak them out even more. I mean,
that is hilarious.
yeah, it's just like, just to make it fun and interesting. And if, and I tell them, like at our house, the rule was that you had to taste everything. And a taste was a spoonful, a forkful, and you taste it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. You don't have to eat it, but you do need to say why you like it or why you don't like it. This way, I know, should I make it again? Maybe I don't make it again. Maybe I wait a couple weeks and I do a different recipe. But it's another way just to build that conversation. I could talk about food for hours. I mean, truly. But yeah, so I mean, like those were kind of some of the fun memories that we have. But what's interesting then my daughter, she graduates high school. She decides to do community college and stay home. But a lot of her friends moved on campus. And so she was helping them move and, hanging out with them for the day. And she would tell me, she goes, cannot believe how many kids don't know how to cook. They don't know how to cook. Only the microwave. That's the only thing they know. They don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to organize their room. And she was like, I can't, like, it just blows my mind. She goes, they don't know how to do these things. I mean, it's just so crazy to her. And I told her, I said, well, this is why everybody got chores. And we rotated the chores. So this way everybody learned. And she goes, well, you could have told us how to do it without making us do it. And I'm like, I don't know that it really, packs the punch, like doing it,
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, but which is it is so true. At the end of the day, kids learn. So I have an education background. I have a master's in education, and I've worked with kids for over 15 years. And I can tell you, doesn't matter what age, but kids learn more by doing than by you telling them. Because at the end of the day, let's start off with the attention span, which now it's getting shorter, right? And then to top it off, how is it that you can master anything if you don't practice it? How is it that you can learn how to do anything or remember how to do it later on in life if you're not constantly, practicing and doing and things like that? And there's a lot of, moms that probably are like, oh, but they're too little. There is little charts out there that can tell you like age appropriate chores for every single
100%.
kid. What you're doing is raising an adult that knows how to cook, that knows how to clean, how to look after themselves, how to look after somebody else, like an independent adult that can survive in adulthood without, I don't know, this balance of not knowing how to or overspending their money because they don't know how to cook. So we're going to do Uber Eats or we're going to eat out. And the amount of money,
Yes.
like we literally deleted all those apps out of our phones because the amount of money that it can go down the drain.
100%.
Don't get me
100%.
wrong, every so often, go for it. But just, I don't think a lot of us tend to be very conscious about those money making decisions until you're like already like drowning.
And that's the thing, so as a personal, I probably didn't mention that, but I'm a personal finance coach. And so I have my own business. And a lot of times people ask me, what is the difference? So I'll just give you a personal finance coach is different from a financial advisor because the advisor you go to when you want to invest money. You want to ask about annuities, long-term care, insurance, that kind of stuff. But when you work with a coach helps you with cash flow, the operations of the house, the day-to-day spending. And it's amazing to me, the clients that come to me, they come with guilt and shame because they're like, I'm college educated, excel in my career, I'm married, I have a house. Why can't I get this money? Why do I have so much debt? I mean, what's happening? And my clients that have children, I tell them, I said, money is like children. If you're not keeping track and keeping an eye, they will go off and get into trouble. And money is just like that. It will go off and get into trouble. And so a lot of times people think, oh, you're a money coach, you're going to show me how to budget. Well, yes, but budgeting, that conversation doesn't happen until month 3 or 4. It is down the road that we have that conversation because so many things need to happen up front before we can get to budgeting. And the reason why people fail at budgeting is because they don't take the time to figure out cash flow. Where is their money going? And having that honest conversation. Like I have clients will come to me, single people that will come to me and they're like, well, I don't need to budget because I'm the only person spending money in the house. So I know where my money goes. That is 100% not true. If you are not tracking it, you really don't know. And I've had a client that lives in a more expensive part of the country, empty nester, newly divorced. So she is on her own. And she's like, I don't understand it. Every month, my debt goes up a little bit more. And so we got her onto an app and we started tracking cash flow. And I told her, I said, don't change anything. I just want to see what your day-to-day looks like without changing anything. Well, so we looked at the spending, and she was spending on average $600 a month on restaurants. Now, she's a foodie, so she remembers all of those meals. She just didn't realize that it totaled up to $600. But she was also spending another $600 in groceries for one person. So that was a conversation that we needed to have. So for coaches, it's not about me telling people what they should or shouldn't do, because we're all in a different phase in life and we all have different goals. And some of us are early when we haven't even gotten married yet. We don't have children. But then I have clients come to me, they've been through a divorce, they've got 2 kids, and so what the important thing is that I meet people where they are. And we have that conversation out loud. You want to talk like this particular person, they wanted to retire in 3 years. But when I ask them, and this is very, very common of my clients, when I ask them, what does it mean to you to retire? What does it mean to be financially independent? They don't have an answer for that. Well, I want to travel. Okay, well, what does that mean? Do you want to travel for a week, 2 weeks? Do you want to go to Europe? Are you getting an RV? Are you selling your house? I mean, let's talk about the details. The nitty gritty brings you joy. Where, let's have that conversation of what does it look like so we can work toward that. But if you don't have a goal that you're working toward, then you just go in circles because you're not going in any direction. And so that's the conversation that we have as a coach. And so for me, when I work with people, the idea is that I work with them for about, on average 3-4 months. It kind of depends on the complexity of the situation, how many bad habits we need to have a conversation around. But a lot of what I do is I teach people how to fish. I want them to build those financial muscles so that they know how to answer the questions when life throws curveballs. It's like a lot of, college. I was on a college campus a couple months ago, and the big question was, is there a recession coming? Well, yes, there is a recession coming. But you know what else is coming? A boom, because that's the way the economy works. There are times when we are going to have a recession, which, by the way, is great if you're prepared, because there's a ton of opportunity during a recession. I said, if you're not prepared, then that can be a very hard time. But if you're prepared, all kinds of opportunity, because a lot of people are not. But then there's also a boom. So these things are always going to be ahead of us, but we don't know when. And so a lot of what I teach is to make sure that people are prepared. No matter what happens, they're covered and they can live their life without changing, regardless of whether we're in a recession or we're in an economic boom. And I love it. I love doing it. I love when the light bulb goes off and they, have a sense of where their money is going. Does it support the joy today? And that's the other thing. People think, oh, I'm going to hire Monica to be my personal finance coach. I'm going to be on beans and rice. She's going to take away all my fun and it's going to be terrible. But that's not true, because a lot of what I do is, are you spending money toward the things that truly make you happy? And the answer 9 out of 10 times is no. Money is just convenient. Oh, I'm running into the store. I'll just get this one more thing. Oh, I'll just do this. Oh, look, tickets for some play. I'm going to buy tickets here without any thought to what does that mean to everything else on my plate that I'm responsible for. And so it's a lot of it is just being aware and putting money toward things that bring you joy today without sacrificing tomorrow's security. I know I said a lot there.
No, no, no. It's so helpful because, especially I guess, especially for my generation that we just, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. And there's so many like, between COVID, between
Yeah.
everything, literally health-wise, financially, political, so on and so forth. And it's just kind of like the emotional intelligence, just so many things that it's just we're trying to be able to teach our kids and how to reprogram ourselves and how to learn how to how to be financially intelligent while being also like mentally and emotionally intelligent and all of these things that we're just trying to balance out and learn. I know that a lot of us need people like you because you're 100% right. Half the time we're not very, especially on these subscriptions, right? Like it is just wild because there's so many ways that we can get what we want in either free or cheaper way, but we don't because we fall into that trap, the marketing trap that everybody, that they tell you that you need it right now and you have to do it now. And it's just kind of like we need to learn how to take a pause and really think about what is it and do we really need it, right? And so I love what you do because that is so helpful. And I know that's going to help so many more people. And, if there's any single like parent listening or any single mom listening to Monica, reach out to her because at the end of the day, I know that it could be hard to admit it or even beforehand. Like, if there's anybody here that they're either pregnant or wants to get pregnant in the future and don't know, I really, really fully recommend you to start with your financials because kids are
Yes.
expensive. And not only talking about birth and the medical debt that comes with it, but the kids get sick, get ear infections, have to have surgery, get, ER, urgent care, left and right, and this and that. And then you're here like seeing, I don't know, 3 different specialists and, or if your kid has some type of special need and some type of special treatment and that just more depth and more, and I am very like, we're guilty as charged here because at the end of the day, like the amount of medical things is just ridiculous. And then half the time you turn around, it's like, what's the point of paying, the right now my brain is like not but what's the point of like all of these medical insurances and then still get billed
Yeah.
over easily $1,000, $2,000 for a service of like here, Tylenol.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to me. I mean, it's true. It's overwhelming, the bills and, but it highlights just how important it is to track where your money goes. I mean, people ask me, oh, do you recommend an app that can track? But I mean, honestly, there's a handful of them out there, but I don't know that there's any one that will give you everything you need because it's hard like how do you build an app that will service a family and a single person or a new college graduate or a retired person living in different parts of the country. I mean, like it's very hard to do that. And so having one that can get most of the things that are important. I personally use an app and an Excel spreadsheet because I like to see an overview of where my spending is going. So use the app for the day to day just to kind of, keep track of things, put some notes in there. But then when I use my Excel spreadsheet, and I actually have it on my website, when people buy the book, I send it free along with like 11 other things. But what's nice is that I have my budget for the year that I base it on last year's spending. And then that's my starting point. And I think about, okay, what else am I doing this year? And so I make my adjustments, but then I make columns for each month. And I say, okay, in January, this is what I spent totals for these categories. And then I track it. And so in my budgeting, I have my budget for the month, every month, but I also total that and I have a budget for the year. And the reason that's important is because there are no 2 months that look alike. your summer spending when you have kids. I mean, your listeners know camp, travel, extracurricular activities, pool parties, whatnot. When the kids are in school, back to school money, camps and, school field trips and, support your teacher and happy teacher day and all of those things, So, there's no 2 months that look alike. So having a budget for the month, while helpful, but doesn't really give you the confidence because you could, like I traveled in May. I have a budget for groceries, but I wasn't here in May. So I didn't spend hardly any of that money because I was only here for like 3 days. But so what does that mean for the rest of the year? And so if you take the budget times 12 and give you an annual budget, and then compare when you get to around June, July and see, have I really spent half my budget for that category? And I like using groceries. It's a really good example. Everybody eats. Am I really on target with that? Or is there any extra money in there? And I do that for all of my categories, and a lot of times I go, oh, gee, I thought I was going to spend more on travel, but I'm really not going to go anywhere for the summer. So I don't need all that money. And so you can make adjustments to your monthly budget that will give you an update on your annual. And so that you have a better sense of where your money is going. And that's just like one example of things that I teach clients to help them to get the most out of their cash flow that gives them a lot of joy and happiness, but without sacrificing security for tomorrow. And the younger you are, and I'm sure everybody knows this, the younger you are, the better position you're in. When I started, I was not young. I was a late starter. And so I had a lot of ground to catch up on, but I was still able to do it in 10 years. Again, necessity is the mother of all invention. So I share my story and I wrote the book and I coach people because I want, especially mothers and women are at a disadvantage. So I want women to understand that, there is a way that you can still reach financial independence. There is a way that you can still retire in a reasonable amount of time and do the things that matter to you. Like some people, they just want to go and spend time with their grandkids. They don't want to travel. But then I have other people, they want to sell everything, buy an RV, and just go around the country. And there's nothing right or wrong with any of it, but it's what brings you joy. And that's the most important thing. And that's what I teach people. That was a lot. Sorry, I can go on. I'm very passionate about finances.
No. I love it. I love it. And definitely I would love to be able to invite you again because this topic is so important, especially like I said, today and age, it's just hard. And I've even had a discussion with my husband, like on and off, like, should we move? Should we not move? Should we look, because at the end of the day, like I live in Miami and it's all nice and pretty, but it's so overly priced and extremely exaggerating because it's just because of the name, right? And overall, it's kind of like, is it even worth it because of, because it's Miami? So it's kind of like, where do we, so it's so many questions that I would love to be able to continue talking to you and asking questions because, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. So, but before we do go, I would love to, give you the chance to go ahead and talk to us about, what you would like to, do you have something for the guests?
Absolutely. So yes, I do offer so as a personal finance coach, my website is grabyourslice.com and you can go there. And if you're interested in talking to me one-on-one, you can book a 30-minute free initial consult. And, and if you decide to work with me, that's great. If you want to interview other coaches, I'm happy to give referrals because I find that it's the fit that is most important. You want to feel like somebody gets you. If you want to have a better idea of personal finance, I did publish a book called Grab Your Slice of Financial Independence. You can get that on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There are a lot of great reviews on Goodreads to get a sense of the book, but it is basically my 10-year journey going from the $257,000 of debt as a single mom with 2 kids to 10 years later reaching financial independence. And what makes my book unique is that you hear my story, year 1, year 2, year 3, but I group the years into phases so that you can do the exercises and reach financial independence that is your journey. And I've also had married couples buy 2 copies. They do the homework separately at the end of each phase, and then they come together. And I'm hearing from my readers that they have a lot of great conversation that they've never had. And it's been very open and honest because it's very structured having these conversations, which is great because I wrote it for single parents, but it's nice to know that married couples are finding it helpful as well. But yeah, you can find out more about me at grabyourslice.com. My name's Monica Scudieri, and I have the book, Grab Your Slice of Financial Independence, and my email is grabyourslice@gmail.com. So all grab your slice.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Monica, for being here today. I really appreciate having you here. And if this resonates with you, I would love for you to like, follow, and share this podcast with a fellow mom. And if you have a story, a lesson, a laugh, or a moment that has changed everything, send me a message, and I would love to have you as my guest on my next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.